and I'm in charge of the Davenport office. My credentials, I won't try to bore you too long, but I spent 10 years as the designer, draftsman, and estimator for Midwest Architectural Wood Products, which later became Adams Architectural Wood Products. So Mark and I worked for the same company for a long time. I'm a member of the Davenport Historic Preservation Commission. I've been the chair of that commission for almost 5 years. In a previous life, I was also the associate producer of the ACE Hardware underwritten About Your House with Bob Yap PBS television show. And so I'm very proud to have my name on 56 PBS shows of a show that emphasizes historic preservation and home repair. Renaissance Restoration as a general contractor is now, I've become kind of infamous in Iowa because we are the general contractor on the restoration of the dome of the old Capitol in Iowa City. And no, we are not the ones that caused the fire. And no, they were not our subcontractors. However, I am the guy that's in charge of cleaning up the mess. And I do have some of the shop drawings of the millwork that's currently being farmed out to start rebuilding that process. And I'm happy to share with you, you'll get it first before anybody else. The university has agreed to rebuild exactly as is with timber framing. We are not going to rebuild it with steel. And this is something for all Iowans that I think exhibits a great deal of pride in our state that we would go that far. And I think, keep your fingers crossed, that all the timbers are going to be native white oak cut from Johnson County, from trees that were standing when the old Capitol was built. So we have some drying problems we're trying to resolve, but I think we're going to make it. And so all in all, that project is, I've become infamous because I've been in all the papers. I wrote so many letters trying to tell them not to use propane torches to take paint off. So that's why you heard me this morning say don't use propane torches on wood. With that, I'll move to Mark. He can tell you what he's done.
It's a hard act to follow, really. My name is Mark Schuck, and I'm the operations manager for Adams Architectural Wood Products, which was previously Midwest. And I'm in charge of all the design work, shop operations there, do a lot of the estimating, practically all the estimating. We're involved with the state capitol, we're bidding on the state capitol also. And before that, I was a design engineer for a mass production over in Lincoln, Nebraska. And then I came over here to take a position with the old Midwest, and now I'm back as Adams. What Adams is a restoration window company. We duplicate or replicate or resurrect all types of wood windows. We make strictly a wood window, no clad products whatsoever, and we're a purist. Now, if you have something that you need duplicated without question, either for personal reasons or historical reasons, we can more than likely help you out. And with that, I'll...
Replacing wood window sash. I'm going to just a brief overview. The sash that we saw earlier today was a handmade sash, and that was something that probably would have continued to be seen in this area up through about the end of the Civil War. Would be really pretty much the end of hand sash making in this area. After that, and even before that, the Mississippi Valley, Davenport, Clinton, and Dubuque were the national centers for the window sash making industry. There were many companies up in Dubuque, and there were, of course, a big company in Clinton and a lot of companies in Rock Island and Davenport that produced window sashes and different ones. Those window sash makers were absolutely no different in every respect than the modern window makers of Pella, Anderson, Marvin. They sold the best technology that they had at the time to make the best window they could, and they sold them in a similar manner as being sold today. They sold them through catalogs and lumber yards. I have a couple of catalogs with me from Particularly, I have the E.L. Roberts catalog from 1908, and I have some handouts for you. You can have some copies of pages out of that to show you how windows were sold. The big difference between then and now is that then wood was cheap, labor was cheap, and glass was really expensive. Nowadays, wood is expensive, labor is expensive, glass and other things are cheap. And so some things in window making have kind of flip-flopped in the world, okay? And in those days, in the early part of our country's existence, because glass was so expensive, particularly in big pieces, it was cheaper to make windows with little pieces of glass. So you have little divider bars called muttons that were put in out of necessity. They would have much rather had big panes of glass like everybody else, but because they couldn't, they made little ones. As time went on and glass making got better, the muttons started to kind of go away a little bit until we hit the Victorian era in the Queen Anne window, where you have muttons used as a decorative device. And there you get to really teeny tiny little pieces of glass and with funky muttons that are made to be decorative. And so early muttons are always skinny because you're de-emphasizing the line of the mutton. And as you get on farther and muttons become decorative, you want to show off your muttons so they become bigger and whiter. Okay? And these are kind of the things that you start looking at when you want to replace a window sash. And mutton width and the style and component width are really, really important when you're looking at replacing window sash. You want to get as close as you can to the original. Here's the enemy. A lead encrusted, and boy has it got a lot of lead on it. 1 3/4 inch thick. You'll find this sometimes. Okay? Clear white pine window sash. This came from the Edgewater Beach Apartments in downtown Chicago. We counted, there's 41 layers of paint on it. It was installed in 1929. We know the exact date when the building was built. The only reason this one didn't get restored is because the bottom sash was completely gone. It had been cut down for an air conditioner, so we made whole new window sash to replace it. This is utterly salvageable, and we rehabilitated, I think, 120 of these. You made about 85, I think, of these where they had actually taken the whole thing out and replaced them with aluminum. What are the features of this sash that you need Mark to replicate? I mean, he can make another sash that will fit underneath this one. This is an upper sash that will go together. What are the things that you have to watch for? Well, the first thing is it's got to be that thickness, 1 3/4 inch. Not that easy to find. Sorry, Pella doesn't make them. Well, yeah, you do, don't you?
Yeah, that one is actually.
That one is 1 3/4 inch. Marvin makes them, and I don't think Anderson's got to make them, do they?
Weather Shield.
Weather Shield's got them. Not every big window manufacturer can make an 1 3/4 sash, and watch out in some of the stuff at Cornell. I guarantee you there will be some that are 2 1/4, which is the other big thickness. You want to replicate the sticking, the molding profile on the inside. Mark's got lots of cutters that you don't have to pay for.
Right.
You may have to pay for him to set it up in his machine.
Right.
But he may very well have, a profile that's very close to this, or so close that you're not going to recognize the difference. If you have an acutely historic building where you have a profile that Mark doesn't have, a knife to cut is about how much?
Well, it all depends on what has to be purchased for it, but we run between $200 and $600 is a good, reasonable price for a custom knife.
Okay? Between $200 and $600. If you got a lot of window sash, that's not a whole lot of money. You know? If you've got one, it's a lot of money. Another thing this window has that you want to replicate, and I know somebody here in this room has got these, is this little thing. This is called a sash lug. All right? Pella, Marvin, Colby, they all look at that and they say, we have a cute little block that you can screw on to it, okay? But to get one that's actually part of the style, okay, is pretty critical in historic work. You're asking, what in the world good is this thing? Well, it was originally intended as a device to prevent glass breakage. You would, even though this is a top sash, it really actually worked originally. Okay, and this actually is upside down, so, okay? If you lowered this sash and it came down too fast and it hit the sill on that, it would break the glass. That's what a sash lug is there to prevent. The one on the lower sash, where the sash lugs are on the inside, look at that. There's coal dust since 1928. When you raise the sash, and you throw open the sash, it'll top out and it'll break. And so that's what they're for. Later on, they became a decorative element, and there are a lot of different OG profiles that
We can duplicate anything. It's a shaper profile. It passes through a shaper.
So, another aspect of this particular sash that you want replicated, and that this has, you wonder what this groove is. That's for the weather stripping. It uses a piece of metal weather stripping that's nailed onto the jam side that the sash slides up and down on. Adams can provide you with that weather stripping. And you can also retrofit that weather stripping on old sash. And it really works good. There are three companies that make it. Mark is happy to help you, obtain some. It comes in both zinc and bronze. But if you want bronze, bring your Visa card. It also has one for the top, which has a metal piece still in there. And it has one at the meeting rail, or check rail, at the bottom.
Which on this particular sash is an interlocking.
It's an interlock.
There'd be another piece of metal that is on the opposite sash, and when they come together, they hook
Lock
together.
You want to look at the mutton profile, and you want to make sure it's the right width. Now we come to glass. When we started with this project, the architect had specified that we would take a router and route out the window to accept glazed or thermal pane glazing, insulating glass. I'm proud to say that I talked them out of it. These windows had 1/4-inch plate glass in them. That's why when you come along to look at this thing, you'll go, oh, it's heavy. What we put in instead, and what is becoming more and more increasingly popular, is laminated glass. This is glass which has it's actually two pieces of glass that are bonded together using a PVC interlayer. All right? It installs just like regular glazing putty. And guess what, folks? This doesn't fail. The problem with thermal pane glazing is
You have seal failures, which will basically show up like there's moisture in between two pieces of glass, and it'll appear foggy. And that is a major problem.
I have articles from Glass Contracting Magazine that states unequivocally that the average seal failure rate in most manufactured insulated glass in the United States is something around 10% in the first 5 years. And that by the end of the first 25 years, that fully 3/4 of insulated glass units will fail. Okay? When they fail, the insulated value goes bye-bye. What makes insulated glass? Insulated glass is two panes of glass bonded together with an aluminum spacer that's filled with silica to try to keep moisture out. If that seal fail, and that way you get, one pane of glass is R1, two panes of glass is R2, and the dead air space in between is perhaps another 2R. 4 is about tops, mostly in the world. You can put fancy gases in between. You can put, argon and
krypton and all different kinds of stuff inside, which are frankly colorless, odorless gases, and when they're gone, you don't know they're gone, so you have no idea whether there are things working or not. So you've got maybe R4. Well, folks, the sidewalls of your house are R10 without any insulation in them. You know, what really are you gaining? I mean, I'd love to talk to the guys from Alliance and their little program, because they're not helping anybody at all with that. So here we have two panes of glass. It's R2, without even bothering to worry about what the inner layer does. So you're getting up there closer and closer to insulated glass. The nice thing about this one is that the inner layer is a 90% UV blocker, so that all of the fading of your drapes and your carpets and anything inside is not going to happen. This is what museums want in their windows. This is what they spec, so that nothing fades inside. The other big advantage of laminated glass is that the sound attenuation is incredible. We did this in every single apartment owner that we put this in the Edgewater Beach Apartments, which sits about 150 yards from Lakeshore Drive. Every one of them said they could not believe how quiet it made their apartment because of the breakup of the sound as it goes through it. So if you live close to a highway, this is definitely the stuff you want. Now, if you absolutely, positively have to have insulated glass, Mark is happy to make it. And I think you've got some mutton to show
Yes, I
the
do.
problems with mutton, so I'll back off on that.
For historical reasons, this is one of the biggest stumbling areas of insulated glass as opposed to single. And I had a couple of these in my hand a while ago. This is the traditional single glazed mutton, real nice and thin, 3/4 of an inch thick. And if you look on Fritz's window, his is heavier on this one because it's only a single mutton in a vertical installation. But traditionally, this is wet. But for insulated glass, your mutton gets thicker. And for the reason being is you have to cover a spacer on your insulated glass. So depending on your application, if you want the insulated glass, it is available for an upgrade. But like Fritz says, with your laminated glass, you can put your laminated glass in this profile, putty glaze it, and you have a really good R value. Put a traditional storm and screen in front of it, and you're very, very close to an insulated glass unit in performance, and without all the hassles and expense. You know, it's just something to consider. I'm going to pass around a single glazed putty glazed window with those muttons, and this particular one is glazed with the linseed oil based putty. If you want to look at it when it gets to you, those are 3/4 inch muttons, and that's very traditional for us. It's also very, very, very typical for us to do a sash like that. You can. What it is the glazing rabbit on an insulated glass sash is a lot deeper, because an insulated glass unit is going to have a minimum of a 1/2 inch thick overall thickness of that glass. And this piece that Fritz had here is a 1/4 inch deep. So you have that additional rabbit depth that you must take up. You know, exactly what Ed's got right here. There's the difference. You have the extra space. You can put a wood stop in there if you so desire. You know that's something that you can cut on a table saw if you're so inclined, and put a wood stop and nail it in, and that's certainly doable. But you know, that's your choice. Certainly, it is an option for you.
How about if we're replacing glass in a traditional old window? Can you go to laminated, or do you have the same problem now with if you're doing it in the insulated glass? You have to put a stop in. Do you need more room than on your
If you have a single glazed window and you want to switch it to laminated, usually there's enough space there for the putty. I mean, because you can, as long as there's just enough room there, and I'm saying a 1/4 inch will be sufficient for you to put putty there, because you know, it's not the putty that retains the glass, it's the glazing points that retains the glass. So only thing you're doing with that putty is protecting that joint from water infiltration around the edge of the glass. But as long as there's enough room for putty there, yes, that is a viable option.
The one problem with laminated glass is that you're probably not going to be able to cut it. You're probably going to have to go to Ace Hardware and have them cut it.
How expensive
It's a couple bucks a foot.
Square foot.
more is that, how much in comparison to the thing?
Float glass is about 85, 90 cents a foot. Am I getting close on that? A buck a foot? Yeah, somewhere in there. So twice, a little more than twice as much. And it is harder to cut. You have to score it on both sides, and then you have to, fire is required, you have to.
Mhm.
You're going to have to make for us, it's not becoming harder to cut. You're going to have to put a little more weight back. There are some techniques, but I don't want you doing it. I want your hardware dealer doing that one.
You
I'll show you how it's easy.
I have a couple questions. How are you guys addressing, for example, high-rise buildings where the design pressure might have to be a lot more than what the original building was built? I understand laminated glass will work, but Pelican developed a system now for Florida. It's about $9 a square foot. It's 7 laminations of glass and insulated glass.
Right. Florida has, of course, for those that you don't know, of course, after Hurricane Andrew went through, they developed a new, incredibly tough glazing glazing effect that has to be used across the stand to withstand a 2x4 at 100 miles an hour. Okay. And so they actually went, that's where this all came from, was they went to laminated glass, and a lot of the big window manufacturers have developed a system that will do that. In high rises, typically, I'm not too worried about high rises because architects refuse to restore windows and put in new sash at that height. They're tearing them all out left and right.
My second question,
So I
addressed to the architect in the group, why is it then that almost all of our commercial buildings that have aluminum windows have insulated glasses? Because if you think about what he's talking about, he's dead on, that after, there's no manufacturer out there that warrants their insulated glass for more than 20 years. So what happens after 20 years to these buildings that have hundreds of windows?
They have to replace them, don't they?
Exactly.
Which makes their payback on doing the windows really miserable, doesn't it? Yeah. It's a huge problem in American society, and I'm going to come down and I'm going to blame not really the major window manufacturers. I blame more of the small window manufacturers who are out there. They want bigger market share, so they go out and they advertise like you would not believe. And particularly the worst of offenders, and I'm not picking out anybody, but the worst offenders are the PVC window people. You know, you gotta have triple insulated, folks, all that malarkey that you're seeing in all of these advertisements is exactly that. It's malarkey. You just gotta stop and think about what it is that you're buying sometimes. And, I don't wanna just wholesale put down the PVC window industry, but I can't wait. If you think that the problems with insulated glass are the ones that are pronounced, wait until they hit the UV breakdown of PVC. When everybody finally discovers that polyvinyl chloride breaks down under ultraviolet light and does so in a rather quick fashion, and all of those fancy plastic windows that you've gone and stuck in your house because some fast-talking salesman has come by, wait till they start coming apart because the PVC is degraded. Because guess what? Windows sit out in the light.
You say that there was PVC
Interlayer in this, and that is designed specifically not to break down on that. It's a clear product rather than, it's not, I can't say that it's PVC that breaks down. It's the colorant that they put in PVC that breaks it down. Okay? Clear's okay.
For many, many
White,
years.
brown.
Tan.
Have you ever noticed that you can have any color of vinyl siding you want as long as it's white or off-white? Because of the colorant problems that they have. Anything but those two colors fade almost immediately and accelerate the breakdown process. So it's the colorant that they put in.
Did I hear you say that these laminated windows have a life expectancy of 20 years?
They have a life expectancy as long as any piece of glass.
Well, what,
That's
I
good.
just thought I heard back here that there was a warranty on...
Thermal paint,
Thermal paint.
insulated.
Insulated glass.
I misunderstood you.
The longest warranty out there, I think, is Marvin, isn't it? Usually
20,
20 years.
yeah.
Marvin just went with 20 years, ours is non-prorated.
Okay, that's another thing in window warranties. You brought up a good one.
21 years will probably fail.
Yeah.
Proration. Always look at your warranties. If it's a prorated warranty, it isn't worth the money that the thing's written on.
The gasket system has
Mhm.
is it possible to put that product like this and retrofit it to old style?
Sure. I mean, if you can give me a call, I can give you the part number and phone number of where to buy that gasket at your discretion.
Actually, that's Schlegel Fuel
That's-
and it's made in Iowa.
Yeah. Mhm. And
The
that's a,
largest manufacturer window gasket in the world.
it's a, even part number's QDS 250, so that's, it's actually, readily available. As a matter of fact, and they might have that down at Ace,
I know Kane Baker is Davenport. Now this brings us, as long as we're on this, I wanted to touch a little bit on the other aspects of window construction. Old windows are drafty, folks. I'm not going to deny it. I'll be the first one to tell you that they are, because coal was cheap. They weren't as concerned about heat as we are, and nowadays even more important, cooling, because cooling is actually more expensive. A window needs to be sealed, and it needs to be sealed along the outer edges and at the rails, at the top, heating, and bottom rails. Mark's got what has kind of now become the standard. And you notice this has got one in the bottom too. Most windows today are manufactured on some sort of jam liner system. Everybody's got their own. We got to keep the engineers in play. But basically what it is it's a plastic extrusion with some mechanical hardware inside of it that counterbalances the window. And they've got a piece of foam behind it. The two of them kind of keep the window in there by friction and by the operation of a counterbalance.
There's a spring-operated weight and pulley system within here. And if you look back in there, you can see the mechanism. And you can come up and look at this. I think it's a little big to pass around, but,
What's really nice about this, you see the difference in the profile on the edge? There's the jam liner fits around that, and so wind does not blow through this like the old-fashioned ones do. It acts as a weather stripping on the side. And you don't have to buy a whole jam and sill and everything to get this. If you have a window that's beyond replacing, beyond the point where you really can't save it anymore, this is one option that you can do. I usually often recommend you where you have a wholesale problem, where a lot of windows are really gone a long way. Because you can install this jam liner in an old opening.
and you can do it
And all you're
yourself.
replacing is the sash. You're saving all of the frame, the sill, the head, all of the casing on the outside, everything you're saving. And you can do these with insulated glass, you can do them with laminated glass, you can do them with plain old dumb glass. You can put, which is still the best thing. You can put fancy restoration glass in them. Your glazing options are almost infinite. And these will install in minutes. The first one will take you an hour. The second one will take you, 25 minutes, and after that, it's maybe 15 minutes apiece. And the nice thing is you don't disturb your old interior woodwork. You can keep your beautifully patinaed, whatever, oak, whatever it is that you've got on the inside. You can install it with the same old sash stops that were in there. And Adams makes them custom to your opening size. Every order is custom, so all you have to do is measure how wide and how tall, and they'll make you a set of sash that are going to fit in that opening. And that's down to the 16th. Okay? Doesn't have to be. A lot of companies are selling what in the trade is called a tilt pack. The nice thing about this is when you get this, you can tilt your windows in for cleaning. Pella, are you making a tilt pack? We're not making a tilt pack. You'll talk about that. It's got a jam distance there. That's a complete window, that fits inside. But Marvin makes a tilt pack, Colby makes a tilt pack, Anderson makes a tilt pack, Weather Shield makes a tilt pack. We can all.
That's the advice I got. Get a contractor.
Yeah, oh yeah.
It really is. I mean.
He can measure.
Well, somebody that, you're not out there doing it yourself, and the first one's gonna take you an hour. Yeah, that's fine. If indeed.
It's measured, right.
And
You know, it's like.
we have packets of information up here that give
How to measure.
very explicit instructions on how to measure.
Yeah, but you guys do the right thing, but, you know, if it's not right, you know, it's a mess.
Right.
And,
No.
but they're wonderful. I'm very pleased.
The majority of the work that we do with our company is dealing directly to the homeowners. And we as a manufacturer don't go out and do field measurements. We provide very explicit instructions, like I said, on how to measure yourself. And we're very successful in doing that. Very successful.
It can be a little scary.
Oh, yes.
Find windows that are out of flounder.
Very.
Oh, very.
So how do you count for that?
Well, what you do is you tell Mark that, okay? And you can tell him by taking cross measurements, measure the opening and the cross. And what he can do is he can manufacture a window that has taller top and bottom rails. You will have to obviously trim them. My favorite one is the Cody, Buffalo Bill Cody's house over in LeClaire. A masonry structure that was not well built when it was made. And they had windows that were 2 inches out of plumb, out of square. They were racked. And they couldn't change them. I mean, they were shaped like this, okay? 2 inches out and 3 feet. I mean, that's a pretty out-of-rack window. And we made new window sash for it, and we gave the contractor over height, taller, so that he could take and cut the top and bottom off and make them fit. I mean, that can be done. Another solution, if you have a frame structure, is to straighten the window up, and it can be done. You know,
A lot easier to do that with wood than masonry.
a lot easier. Masonry's a lot tougher.
Yes.
Ma'am, you had a question?
Yeah, when you do a replacement window, what interior molding do you have to remove in order to get the
Sash stop.
Sash stop. And what it would be is,
Party stop. If you're putting in a whole new, if you're putting in a jam liner, you'll have to get the party stop.
exactly, but just for as far as exposed trim that would be reinstalled, would be the sash stop on one side only. On one side only, because all you need is room is to get the sash out, and you rotate them out, and, you know, drop your sash cords, you know, and, you know, and
Now,
you
if
can
you're
take,
replacing your upper sash, you're gonna have to get the party stop out.
exactly.
There are 2 ways to get the party stop out. One is to make your upper sash operable, and lower, you gotta take the bottom sash out first. Then take the upper sash and take it all the way down to the sill, so it's completely down. Then carefully, and I use a vice grip with a pair of paint stir sticks on either side of it, so that I don't bite into the wood, and I start kind of wiggling it. And at the top, you start at the top, and it comes out from the top to the bottom, and you can get the party stop out. The other method is to take a saw and cut the thing into little pieces and replace it. And since party stops are often very worn, and they are no longer a rectangle, I usually recommend replacing the party stop anyway. Okay? When we did the Edgewater project, we had a couple hundred windows to do. We had Adams manufacture new Honduran mahogany sash stops, because it's a much harder, closer grained wood, and it's going to last a lot longer than white pine in that rubbing situation. And so, you know, the cost was insignificant in the total context of the whole thing. But if you're replacing it with those, you don't need it. Just go.
Rip it out and don't worry about how it comes out, because you don't be using it with this application.
But if you're doing a sash like he's got, save your stuff, save your parts.
And in addition to that, we also make a replacement window to where if you still want to use your weight and pulleys, we can still make that style of sash for you
And they
with,
can,
with the provisions for the rope or the chain already inside the sash.
they can do the bore and plow,
Mhm.
okay? They can do everything so that it's, you know, and they can do all of this. If you, I still think that this is probably the best weather stripping you can get. Is the old zinc metal weather stripping. It's one of those things that's a labor of love, but if you learn how to do it, it really works very well. And it's something that's, weights and pulleys don't wear out. These things do. This is kind of another headache waiting to happen kind of deal down the road. One of those solutions that we've come up with, you know, that work pretty good. You're doing a quick and dirty society kind of thing. But if you're doing it as a labor of love, I don't have any of these in my house. I've restored all of the weights and pulleys. I've installed zinc weather stripping. And I love this stuff. I just love this stuff. It really works well. There's very little hassle with it. And you know, my windows go up and down real nice all the time. I don't have to worry about the counterweight. The other thing that I want to touch on it before we get too far. I don't know, are we taking up anybody's time yet? Okay. Is the subject of storm windows. Most of the windows that you're going to find of the age that we saw this morning never had storm windows. They had shutters. And they used shutters as kind of a storm window. The shutter was there to keep the rain primarily off of the sash. If you saw the storm coming, Mom would scream, "Oh, shut the shutters!" And everybody have to run around and pull all the shutters shut. They were also there to keep the sun out during the summer because they didn't have air conditioning. Okay? After the Civil War, and when manufacturing processes started to move along, they started to manufacture wooden storm windows. In the beginning, of course, they started out just like the primary one. Cheapest glass you could get, so they all had multiple lights. And I have all of these. I have a handout for you. It shows kind of what was available. And you'll see a lot of times they'd have many multiple lights. Does anybody remember the storm windows with the one little window that opened in one corner? So that if when it got too hot in the room in the winter, you could go open up one corner. Well, and I have these on some of mine. Is the ventilator in the bottom, the little flapper thing that would go up, that was also for getting some fresh air into the room, you know. So they started to manufacture wooden storms. They fit into the window out there in the casing, in the plane of the casing. Right there. There has still nothing been invented. We can take all the wonderful engineers at all the big window companies that know windows and air infiltration and anything, you know, we can go on and on and on about how they've all invented new stuff. They still haven't come up with anything better than a wooden storm for keeping the cold out. It fits into the opening pretty snugly. It hits this stop, which is called the blind stop, because of course a shutter was originally called a blind, so it's called the blind stop. It's where the shutter or the storm stops. Okay? It seals all the way around that. It's held in with turn buttons. It's got a little thing at the top that you can hang it on. It always should be measured just a hair short, so that any condensation that might occur inside will run out. Okay? It's got a sill angle on the bottom so that air infiltration is stopped. It's still, bar none, the best thing you can do. And its function is to sit out there through the worst part of the year and protect the inside window, as well as weatherize the inside window. That's its function. In the old days, they were relatively cheap. They've gotten a little more expensive now, but they're still not that expensive. I want you to think a minute about what you've probably got on your house now, which is a mill-finished triple or double track aluminum storm window that dated from probably the 50s, when the height of the aluminum craze was going. Some fast-talking salesman, his son is now in the vinyl business, came whipping through your neighborhood selling aluminum siding. You ever see Tin Man with Danny DeVito? And he says, oh, you don't want to keep putting those old things up and down every year. And he tried to convince you that he had something better. When the wind blows on an aluminum storm window, it blows the glass away from its stops. So the stronger the glass, the stronger the wind is, the looser an aluminum or vinyl window gets. So it works worst when you need it the most. All right? When the wind blows on one of these, it blows it into the stops, and all it does is get tighter and tighter. Okay? What works the best? They're easy to measure. They're easy to install. The one that Mark is passing around is a compromise. It allows you to have your cake and eat it too. You can have a window that pretty much stays in all the time, although I do not recommend that you install them permanently. I tell you to put them in the way the old ones were with turn buttons and stuff. Don't screw them in. Because every once in a while you want to take them down and clean them. They can be painted just like the old wooden storm, and that energy panel comes out from the inside. One of the big advantages of this is that we have forgotten that the upper sash works. Double hung windows are a ventilation system. They're meant to be a ventilation system. They were invented in the United States because they came from England to a very humid and hot climate in Virginia. And they needed a way to keep the house cool. So what you do is you lower the upper sash a few inches and you create a vent which is up near the ceiling. All right? And you raise the lower sash all the way. Cold air sinks, warm air rises. The warm air in the room is expelled out the vent near the top. Cooler air, which is nearest the ground, is drawn in and it creates a circulation. Problem with aluminum storm windows is that they don't have screens in the upper part and it won't work. This has full screen. Your sash can work the way they're supposed to, and you can get your ventilation in your room the way that your house was built to be. Our houses were built before air conditioning. And they lived through Iowa summers fairly comfortably because they used their windows the way they're supposed to.
Pardon?
Is the storm laminated glass?
It can be, but if your primary window is where you want to go, that's the one you want to take laminated. And we do make those in lamination, but your R value, simple fact, it allows air to exchange in between this window and that window. You're better off with the laminated glass in the primary window.
I still think that the old wooden storm is still the best. I mean, I love the combo, but there are some aesthetic problems with it because the screen is always on the outside. They always install black aluminum wire, which is the most invisible of all the different insect wires, so it's not as objectionable. But what I often tell people to do, if you're a good preservationist, just put the old-fashioned wooden storms and screens on the first floor where they're easy to get at, and put those on the second floor where they're harder to go. Or I have them in places. I have regular wooden storms where I have a roof to work off of. If I'm standing on the porch, I have a regular wooden storm and screen there because it's easy to get to.
Starts with really material finally.
Yeah, you're looking about 175 for that
Which is cheaper than a separate storm and screen.
screen.
Okay, if you buy a storm and a screen, they'll be 150 a piece. You could spend $300 on an opening.
Plus you have
with
storage
separate storm and screen, whereas you could spend $175 on one of those. So there's a savings there too.
On our home, we have two large front windows. We did have wooden storms made for them. But I can't open the window window, like many of them, is only like this much.
You have a cottage window where the upper sash is only this big?
Right.
Okay. Mhm.
So what do you do, we don't have the screen or anything, so you just use.
It's unlikely that, I mean, I have one of those too, and I have a separate storm and screen for it. My wife thought I was out of my mind. But it works. The lower sash, you only have to lower the upper sash that much and raise the lower one a little bit. It works. Although I have a lot of other windows in that room, so it's not that big of a deal. Most people tend to put a big storm over that and leave it.
Is the weight consideration worth dealing with that laminated glass as far as putting that in old window with display?
Absolutely.
You're going to have to make donuts on your, if you're going to save your sash, if you're going to save your sash weights, you're going to have to put a little more weight on them because laminated glass
Twice
twice
the
the
weight.
weight of single glass.
Mhm.
And the way that that is usually done, for those of you that are fishermen, make some lead donuts, and you just rest them on top of the old sash weight. Adds a little weight to them. Okay, and that's the easiest way. Another one is again to go to the salvage barn and buy some heavier sash weights.
I noticed, especially the, I don't know how to number it.
That's the weight in pounds usually.
That's pounds.
Usually. Sash weights are pig iron. They were the end of the pour kind of product. When the foundry was making whatever they were making, if they had a little too much hot metal left, they would have sash weights always ready to pour off on the side, and they would just pour the excess. It's kind of like making the big concrete cubes, the concrete splash blocks, yeah.
And they also, a lot of companies now are making wax-covered lead weights that are a modular type system where you can get them in 1, 2, 3, and 5 pound increments, and they all stack together. So if you're doing a retrofit, say for instance, if you want to use your old-fashioned bore and plow with advanced weather stripping and insulated glass, and it's kind of a contradictory statement, but we do see it. You can go that route, or you can just go to local steel and buy solid steel bar in 1.5 or 1 3/4 diameter and cut it to length and weld an eye on the end of it. I've also seen that.
We've had, when I was working for Midwest, we had a lot of projects coming through. Probably we had one out in the East Coast where a family with more money than sense, I think. They were doing a huge new home. This fellow invented like the microchip. I had to do 62 pages of shop drawings for the windows and doors in this guy's house. Okay? He bought 104 double hung weight and pulley windows all in solid Honduran mahogany with insulated glass, true divided light, so all the little tiny, and they were all 6 over 1 inch. Very fancy screen system, very fancy everything. I mean, it was like, how expensive a window can you make? And we had to make our own sash weights. Well, what we did is we got out the steel manufacturer's book and got the size of the rod, and we know how much per foot it weighed, and ordered it up, cut it off in a cut-off saw, drilled a hole through the thing, and we're ready to go. I mean, that's all we did.
Storm windows on aluminum storm windows, and a lot of people have them. And in our home, we don't have air conditioning. So how do you make the best of, and we rely on soft ventilation and cooling things, how do you make the best of aluminum?
Start with how you make the best of aluminum?
Yeah, it's not going to, reflect all of your windows.
All right, I would really examine the house and its orientation to the prevailing weather. Okay? I would also look at tree placement and porch placement. The windows that are going to have the most cool air are the ones that are under the porches. All right? And I would start replacing the aluminum with the windows that are going to affect your cross ventilation the most first. The aluminum, you're it's not going to be conducive to ventilation at all, you know. At best, you'll just get the lower sash. And if anybody thinks that this is cuckoo, I don't have central air conditioning in my house. And there is maybe 1 week out of the year at most in July where we kind of just put, you know, a couple window air conditioners in just for sleeping at night because all of the windows work. You know, it's astonishing. I have a whole lecture I do on house design, how old houses were designed. Folks, your houses were designed by practical people who lived just as we do. You know, they just didn't have some of the mechanical advantages that we have, like vacuum cleaners and central heating. They had to live through the same climate that we do now, and they built their houses. If you look at your house, just go look at it, you will see that it's designed with both heating and cooling in mind. And if you look at where porches were taken off, porches are sunshaded, and they're a place to cool off in the summer. And you ever noticed how old houses have long but skinny porches? Okay, 6 feet, 4 to 6 feet deep. Because if you have a really long porch, the sun during the winter can't come through and get into the house. They were a solar shade. And there was a calculation there for the porch roof to allow sun in during the summer and keep it out during the, or allow sun in the winter and to keep it out during the summer. I can sometimes look at a house and tell you if it was moved. I did this a couple of times where I've amazed somebody. Oh, how did he figure that out? Well, let's see. The house was moved because now there's 21 windows on the north side. You know, the house was reoriented, you know. If you look at your houses, oftentimes there will be very few windows on the north and west. And there will be a lot of windows on the south and east for that reason. So, brick, you know. A lot of brick houses in Mount Vernon. And they were done that, and early ones, because brick was so good in the summer and kept out all the cool. In Davenport, we have the village of East Davenport, which is as old as anything here in Mount Vernon. And the one that I love there is all the kitchens are in the basement. You always know which one are the old houses, but the kitchens are downstairs.
Until then, dress well. Actually, I know another thing, which is technology, that in our old house in the country, we had what was called a whole house fan.
Great.
It was in the attic, in the upper level, and I tell you, when you turn that thing on, I think I had a little oversized one, but it just, when doors and windows started, I had to prop doors and windows open, but it was amazing what that would do. Damn time for our next speaker. As I said, we wanted to present a entire spectrum of options with regard to window replacement, the windows, and the last one is, of course, actually taking most of the stuff, if not all the old stuff out, and putting a totally new one in. And I do have to give the window manufacturers credit. They have definitely responded over the last decade or so in terms of providing products and options that are much more sensitive to historic preservation. And with that, Fred Novy from Pella Window is going to tell you what they have to work with preservation.
Hi everyone, thanks for coming today. I kind of feel like the Osama bin Laden of window guys after talking to those two, or after listening to those two. So I may not have as much firepower left as I thought I had, but Pella's been around since 1925. We've been making wood windows. Originally started the company was a company that built a thing called roll screen, and it was for, of all things, it was for barns to keep flies out. So when you see the old roll screen Pella/Pella Corporation, that's where that came from. We still make roll screens, and we still make wood windows, and we also make clad windows. Pella was the first company to use a metal clad window. Another nasty item according to the wood guys, but we kind of incorporated what the old window had to offer in terms of mortise and tenon construction. Our windows, all of our frames are glued, screwed, mortise and tenon together to provide support for the window. But we use a metal clad on the outside for nothing more than water, to keep the water off of it. What those two gentlemen were talking about, when they were talking about insulated glass, I agree with. I've always been under the impression that architects work for the glass companies, because I figure after 20 years, if you've got to replace 300 or 400 windows in a building, that is a phenomenal cost to go through. And I don't know if that's ever going to change. Insulated glass to this day and age is still it's got a finite lifetime with it. And unfortunately, when that time goes up, the space in between here gets foggy. There's moisture that comes on the inside of the glass, and there's nothing you can do but replace the glass at that time. Pella, since about 1996-7, began to make this window called Precision Fit. And it's a complete double-hung window that fits into what we talked about earlier. You take out the interior stops, you take out the top and bottom sash. Usually you take out the weight pockets in this case and fill it full of insulation, either the foam type that the Ace Hardware guy was talking about, or batt. Caulk where the frame hits the new window and push the whole thing in from the inside, then replace the interior stop. That window you can get in a number of different styles. This one here is called Smart Sash 2, and it's available in a double hung. Pella began making this in about 1930, and I think Fritz still has some of these in his house, so it's been around a long time.
4 of those in my kitchen.
It's still one of the most popular windows on the market. I'll pass it around. It doesn't quite have the R value or the U values of insulated glass, but in the long term, it lasts forever. The worst that can happen with that window, by the way, that third panel there, in this case the second panel, has a 30-year non-prorated warranty with it. The window itself carries a 10-year warranty. But because of that big chunk of wood, as well as the 2 pieces of glass, you have an incredible energy system available. There's a little breather hole in the bottom of each corner of each one of those windows that allows air to circulate to keep the moisture from developing. You can also put inside that space a mutton bar as well as a slim shade. So if you're interested in keeping the sun out entirely, rather than put a awning over the window, you can put what we call a slim shade in there. It comes as a tilt-only slim shade. It doesn't raise and lower in a double hung, but it does in a casement. So very, very old system, works very, very well. It was about 8 years ago, we began developing what we call integral light technology. And what that is a mutton bar that's aluminum clad on the outside, aluminum extrusion. It's got a piece of foam that goes in. Now, this is insulated glass, so again, it has a limited life span. But it also has a wooden mutton bar that is pressed together on the inside of the glass. It's permanently attached to the outside and the inside. And I'll pass that around. I think we're the only company that does that as a standard product. So it's made to look like a true divided light when you really got a big sheet of glass that you've got a mutton bar attached to the outside and the inside. Again, that comes in a wood condition as well as clad. Pella does not make any kind of vinyl window. They never have. They probably never will. They're a slow company to change. They make changes only when they respond from the consumer or the engineers can come up with a better solution. And because of that, we don't change very often. You know, people call us the dinosaur of the window company because of that. If you'd like sometime, we do Pella plant tours, and any of you people are interested in coming on one of those, we'd be more than happy to take you to the plant to see how it's made. Including the golf course, we do. If you're an avid golfer, you can come and spend the morning touring the plant, and in the afternoon you can go golfing. And if you're humiliated by that course down there, so be it, because it's very difficult to play, but it's a fun place. We have plants in Shenandoah, Iowa. We have plants in Sioux Center that make Proline windows. We've also just recently acquired the Peace Door Company, so we make entrance doors. We bought out the Cole Sewell Storm Door Company, which is an excellent product, so we own them now and make storm doors for our products, or for our company. And overall, because I do mostly commercial work, I don't get involved in window replacement, but we have used this product on a number of different replacement jobs, even some large ones. In Chicago, we had, I think it was like 300 window replacements in a hotel down there where they made all the windows black clad because that's what they needed. We just did the Roosevelt Hotel a few years back in Cedar Rapids with Precision Fit. The only thing about that Precision Fit or any of those replacement windows is if you don't paint the outside or do something to the outside, you still have to address that maintenance issue. So sometimes we will, before we put the window back in, the new window, we'll go ahead and wrap or put some sort of brake metal around the existing brick mold to cover it up and protect it. You can also get brick mold that is an extrusion, just like the profiles that you already have, if you're really trying to get away from having to paint ever. Our windows, if you have a Kynar 500 finish on them, you can get a 20-year, again, non-prorated warranty for any of those colors. So what Fritz was talking about, if you get up to the higher floors on some buildings, it might be worthwhile to put clad up there rather than go up there and paint all the time. I know at the university, we've tried to talk those people, the University of Iowa, we try to convince those people on the lower floors where the wood shows, you put wood. When it gets up high, you can put clad and get away with it. Sometimes they go for it, and sometimes they don't. They're very strict about that. It's been an uphill battle. But and that's their right. You know, they're looking at the preservation standpoint, and what they're saying is what was wood in the building originally will stay wood. And if it happens to be metal, it'll probably stay metal. So never the two shall meet, unfortunately. Have an extruded brick mold, and there's also on the, I don't have a, I do here. There's a little accessory groove right here in this window, and you can snap in any brick mold profile you want. We have some standard ones, and if you go to the custom ones, it gets pretty expensive. So, he pays for an extrusion. The same thing he's doing in wood, you can do in metal, basically. Except for the cost. Yeah, the cost gets very... You can expect to pay a lot for custom extrusions. Talking about our Precision Fit windows, on the small end, you can get them as small as 18 inches by 33 inches. The large parameters are 44 inches by 77 inches, basically. We also manufacture a full line of commercial large double hungs that the smallest ones, or excuse me, the largest ones will be 5 feet by 10 feet, and those are called monumental. We also make a commercial one that's 4 feet by 8 feet. We used to make one that was 6 feet wide by 12 feet tall. That is one big window. But, and we've had a lot of applications back in. If you go to Chicago and see some of those big buildings, you can walk through those windows. They're huge. So with that, I guess I'm finished. If you guys need any more information, we have a showroom down in Cedar Rapids where we have all of our product laid out for you to come and look at. And I'm serious about going to the plant. If any one of you guys would like to see how Pella windows are made, you're more than happy to call me and we'll set up a tour. All right, playing golf, right?
Yeah. On your simulated divided light window, if you break the glass, you're replacing the whole side?
Yeah, if you break the glass on all of our windows, we have, there's a couple of screws on each side of the jamb. You unscrew that, there's a hardware system in there that puts the window out, you unscrew that and take the whole sash out. That's the only way that you can actually do this, because once they adhere those mutton bars, they use this adhesive that once you pull this off of here and stick it on the glass, you can't get it back off. So it's very, very difficult to replace the glass in a simulated divided light window. Yeah, don't stick it on your head.
And what is the cost of that replacement?
Is that covered by warranty or?
If it's a stress crack, it's covered by warranty. And if not, that could be up to $200 to replace. Just for pricing, I did some quick pricing before I came over here. The small window, Precision Fit window, is about $200. The large one's about $400. Those big commercial ones start at about $400 and go to about $800. So these guys are right. If you want to refurbish things, it's probably going to be a lot cheaper. But if you're under certain codes where people have to meet energy numbers, then sometimes replacement's the only way to go. It's the only option you have.
Are you talking NFRC certification?
Yeah. There's been a lot of changes in the way that we test windows for performance lately. Pella is one of the few companies that we test every window for air infiltration. So none of our windows, including the precision fit, because that comes as a complete window, all of those are tested for air leaks at the plant. If they don't pass, they don't ship.
You guys do the ASTM standards for testing windows then?
Mm-hmm.
So you run under Window and Door Manufacturers Association?
Mm-hmm. And that, what's the latest one? The standard that Anderson was setting up. I can't remember the name of it now. Anyway, there's so many standards out there. You know, you just have to be careful what you're getting, and I agree with those guys about vinyl windows. If somebody's trying to sell you an unlimited lifetime warranty of any product, you have to be skeptical. So just, unless you're 90. Thank you, folks.
Anybody have any questions about anybody from this morning? Tom?
Well, with this metal clad window, is there any problem with condensation behind the aluminum clad section?
Are you talking about metal getting inside the glass?
No, between the metal cladding and the wood itself.
I'm not sure I understand it, but
In between the clad and the wood?
Just the cladding face.
on the face of this, all of that's to me to weather well, the water sealed off like it's supposed to. All of our wood is preserved with water preservative as well as insects. And what happens typically, if anything, the nice thing about having a roll form aluminum is these cladding sets are replaceable. So if some baseball hits this or breaks it, you take it off. If the sash is rotted out, though, it's probably easier just to replace the sash than it is to try to fix the component.
I think what he's addressing is that those of us that every year have to see this parade at usually about fall, about August, they start coming in like that. The people coming in holding a piece of cladding that used to have a piece of wood behind it.
Right.
Now, the only reason, if I may,
It's a good point.
if you go out to an automotive salvage yard, and you take a dry rag and lay it on the hood of an old vehicle and walk away and come back in a week, and you remove that rag, what are you going to find underneath that rag? You're going to find corrosion. Pella is one of the best manufacturers there is for making a weeping clad system. And a weeping clad system is that any water that gets behind it weeps out to the exterior side of the house. But you know for a fact that if you have something that's wet and a handful of dirt's thrown down on it, then it dries, it's crusty, the weeps will plug up. You gotta be careful along those lines.
The other problem, just so you know, with cladding, this is not an indictment of Pella, but we think they're finding is that like aluminum siding, and I've seen this a bazillion times, is just like aluminum siding. When the termite gets in, you don't know he's there.
That's right.
Okay, and he doesn't eat the cladding. And so all, you wind up having your wooden windows on.
But you make a plain wood window too.
We do make a
They
wood
make a
window.
plain wood window.
Still have and always will, so.
Yeah, I was gonna say that because we did.
Now, we stopped making, what those guys still make is screw divided light. Our last project was down at Hoover, the Hoover Library down in West Range. Tiny little lights, hundreds of them, and they leak. They leaked a lot. So
Yeah, I
it's
know,
like,
they call me in.
either stop what we're doing, and that's when that insulated glass became popular with sticking the buttons on the inside and outside. Well,
I have an environmental question about PVC, is that a problem with environment? We're hearing all kinds of things about PVC.
Something about vinyl windows.
yeah.
Several things about vinyl windows is, they break down ultravioletly, but they don't decompose. So the thing may crack, but it's still there. So you could take it out to the landfill. Environmentally, I don't know the final answer. I'm not a specialist in that field, but
I think the worst about the vinyl windows, and we tend to emphasize the breakdown of PVC because it's a good place to attack. But the real problem, well, it's the truth. I mean, the real truth about vinyl windows is that they're made by old-fashioned storm window people. And all the little parts, that's what they did. You used to make aluminum storm windows, and then aluminum got kind of expensive, so you went over to making vinyl. Bach Vinyl in Davenport, this is a company that I love, these guys, They've been around for 2 generations now, and they're still making things the same way that they did back in 1954. They just changed from aluminum to PVC. The problem is all the little components, all the little parts that make all of the extrusions fit together, and all the little stuff that makes the window work are made out of hot metal and out of nylon. And these things, the hot metal, once it bends just a little bit, it's gone. You know, it breaks immediately. And the nylon, when nylon parts get cold, they crack almost instantly. It's like you've seen it when you put a rose in liquid hydrogen. You know, that's what happens. It's very brittle when it's cold, and they break. And so the windows wind up with all the little parts that make them work not working. That's the biggest problem. But we are seeing, even in vinyl siding, a lot of problems. And the industry is, you know, the last thing that the PVC industry wants to talk to you about.
Something about vinyl, I'm sure Ed will attest that glass is not a structural product. Is that correct? Not correct? The vinyl people use structural adhesive silicone to glaze their windows. And the reason they do that is they use the integrity of the glass to keep their vinyl units together. And there's 2 different coefficients of expansion between the vinyl and the glass. So the shear strength of that silicone or the glazing tape, if they're so inclined to do that, will cause the 2 to separate companies. So now you have a window that leaks air first and then later water. And if water is leaking in, it's going to fail the insulated glass change is going to have clogging. Not to mention, if you have a double hung or a slider with vinyl, you go to operate the window, you're not going to reach up this window and operate like this. You reach up with one hand and push it open or lift it up. That flexion, the flex of that vinyl piece, that check rail, will cause that silicone seal to fail between the glass and vinyl, and you have the same problem. It's not nearly as rigid. Vinyl is welded together by heat, so it's compressed.
Plus you can't paint it, you're limited by the white color.
And Pella, much to Pella's credit, because one of the big preservation, when you want to talk about preservation issues, preservation is chiefly in this country based on what the thing looks like from the outside. All right? Most preservation commissions can't tell you anything about what to do on the inside. They can only tell you about the exterior envelope. That's how most preservation law is written. And Pella, to its credit, has dark green, they have hunter green, they have black, they have some dark colors available in sash, which is the historic way of painting a wood window sash. Right. And they can make their windows look. They also, if you look at his sample there, what you can see is what I did not see when I came into Mount Vernon from the south. Because I was looking at a couple of beautiful Greek Revival homes as I came in on Highway 1 that had had the windows replaced. And they've been replaced with dead flat muttons. I can't call them muttons, divider bars that are in between the glass, and there's no depth to it at all. And if you look at his sash and put it up against Adams, it's very similar. Very similar. You have depth. You have a look that's similar. There's a distance between the outer edge of the mutton and the glass.
You call that window the Kentucky Fried Chicken window, because that's what we usually see. That's the most popular way to put a mutton in, because nobody wants to clean those little mistakes. They'd rather take a squeegee and do the whole thing. So, you have to move with the times, unfortunately, but it really does cheapen up the look of it.
All right. Thank you.
I have one question. A lot of homes, the interior upper side is painted shut with 10 layers of paint. Can you tell us about paintless way?
I can, and the man that can sell you is sitting right here. It's called a window zipper.
Yes, exactly.
I know you got him.
Yep. Window zipper. It's shaped like a pear, if you will. It's
Can I draw on that?
serrated,
I've done this one a zillion times.
serrated teeth on
Can I draw
both
on
edges
that?
of it for cutting the paint.
Sure.
It's actually kind of a wicked looking thing. It's a flat plate that's the thickness of a putty knife. And got serrated edges, comes to a point here, got another wing on here, and then it's got a handle attached to it with a couple of, and it's a device, you've seen them, I know you have. I bet you got them, about 3 of them. Been there since 1969. Bet you sell a bunch of them now. What this does is it gets up, you start in the corner where the parting stop is, and it gets there, it's like a little mini saw. And you can get the thing flat into the sash, doesn't scratch it up, but it cuts the paint all the way around. And you can do it on the inside and the outside, and the whole thing will come with it.
It's got a long handle for two-handle use because you don't need it.
What do you call it? What do you call it?
I'm trying to carry.
It's a window zipper.
Window zipper, and so you don't, the best case scenario is you don't have to go back and paint.
Well, you may chip sometimes. You may
It
chip a
won't
little
be
bit,
major.
but it won't be huge.
Putty knife, putty, I don't think.
Putty knife works, but
Putty, I've broken a couple.
Yeah.
After a while, you just
Hammer it up with a hammer.
Dan,
so unhappy.
why don't you quickly just kind of review what's happening this afternoon?
I will. The plan for this afternoon is, right after lunch, we'll have a couple of demonstrations. I think Frank is going to show us how to glaze his mother's windows.
For free.
And Tom got along some chemicals so we can maybe see how he uses that to reconstitute some wood. Those of you who weren't here, hope they'll have a chance to see it on public TV or via the videotape. So